Now there are some interesting spacing things that we can do with text. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to use the developer tools. So I'm going to open them here. And let's go look at, we'll go right into this article and get into the paragraph and see what kind of changes that we can make in here. So actually, I think I'll do it to the entire article, and let's see if what we've got set on there. So we've already set the color and the background color and the font family for the article. If we go in here, we can add some other things. So let's try one is letter spacing. That's one of the things that we can change is the letter spacing. Now for this, 0 is the standard. That's the normal. And then you only need a little bit to make it change. So if I do 0.2, right, that's pretty small, and I'm going to do an EM, then it changes the space between all the letters. So you see that? And even 0.2 seems pretty big. So we can back it up and even do 0.1 and see what happens. And there we've changed the letter spacing. Well, you can also change the word spacing, and you do that with word spacing. Oops. Word spacing, and here, let's go ahead and pick 2 EM, that's pretty big, and see what happens. And we get this big space between each of the words. And notice this didn't change the space between the letters, but it changed the space between the words. So if we wanted to go with something smaller, we could do a 0.8. And there we've added space, not quite so much. You can also do negative spaces. So let's go up here when we were doing the EM or the letter spacing, let's put a negative in front of it. And all of a sudden it makes it tighter. And that's how you get it. 0 is the normal, and negative makes it smaller and positive makes it bigger. So if I do negative 0.1 EM, that's where we get it. See how it made it tighter? That negative 0.1, it made the spacing between the letters smaller. And you can do, things that really don't work, make things not readable. Right there, we made the word spacing a negative number, so something less than the normal, and all of a sudden it becomes unreadable. So we don't want to do that. All right, let's get rid of this negative one up here too. Another spacing that we can do is line height. So we can specify how tall each line is. This doesn't change the height of the text, but it creates the space for each line. So here it's called line height. And this one we can use a little bit bigger ones. We can use 1.2. And notice that this one changes even before I get a unit. So you can do this one with or without units. So there's 1.6, there's 2.4. And see how the line got bigger? The text is still the same height, but the line itself is bigger. And so you can play around with those. And if I add the EM, it stays the same. So no unit or EM is the same for line height. And then one more is the text indent. So a text indent says, what do we do with the first line in a paragraph? So the first line in the text. So let's say that we want to do 2 EM for this. And there, so here you see that the first indent right there is 2 EMs. And remember that we're just, so there you see it, okay? And now, let's do, I'm adding it to the body. I'm only looking, I highlighted the article, but notice that I wondered why everything was changing, and that's because I've got it in the body tag, so it's happening everywhere. I can make this negative, and then it becomes a hanging indent. So there it is, hanging, going, offsetting back in. And you need to have some margin or padding in there for it to go into. So that's what a negative number does in text indent. Lots of different things that we can do to change the spacing. Now, notice if I want to get rid of all these, I've just added these using the developer tools, which means they aren't changed at all. All I have to do is refresh, and we're back to our regular setup. And so those are just really temporary, and it's just for a while I'm working on them. Let's go in and make a couple changes to our actual code. So for our heading 1, so go back up to in our heading 1 and heading 2, style block, let's change the letter spacing. So we'll do letter spacing and let's set it to 0.1 EM. So that'll add a little bit more space between the letters just in H1s and H2s. And then for the nav, so if we look at this, well, let's go ahead and save it and refresh it. So we see that one change. And there we got a bit more space between the letters in the headings. Now notice that our nav, those are on individual lines. So now let's change it and give it a little bit more line height. So to do this one, we're going to go down to our nav styles. And right here, we'll put that we want, it's in our nav, but we only want the children in any time that we have a UL that's a child of a nav. So this will just say do ULs, but only when it's a child of the nav. Then what we want to do is line height, and we're going to set it equal to 2 EM. And this will be like double spaced, right? Because we're making it twice as big. So we do that and save and refresh. And there we've spaced out that UL. Now only the UL in the nav, right? Right there, it didn't change this UL because this one is not a child of nav. But this one is the child of nav. And it spaced it out because we added the line height. So lots of different ways you can change the spacing on the text.